Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 315 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today we are talking about anti-time management, and we are speaking with Richie Norton. I am so excited about this interview. I actually had reached out to Richie as I was reading his book because I noticed that it worked so well for one of my clients that I actually sent them a screenshot of one of the lines from his book and said, read this. Read it again. Now let's see how we can implement it. And he, after hearing my story, agreed to come on and talk to me on the podcast about his theories about time tipping and how we can actually live more of a life of purpose based upon how we're going to continue to grow our businesses. So let's dive into this episode. Hi, Richie. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here, Jenny. It's going to be so much fun. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. I am so excited to have you on my show. I first initially, when I reached out to you on Instagram, I told you I heard you on Pat Flynn's podcast, and I just loved your book that we're going to talk about, Anti-Time Management. At first, I was kind of like, ooh, what is this? This doesn't make any sense with all the productivity stuff we normally hear.
That's right.
But I was so excited once I actually got a chance to really dive into it. So will you introduce yourself and your businesses for my audience?
Yeah. And I'll start with, you mentioned Pat Flynn. So I've worked with him on a number of projects, including, if you're familiar with the Switch Pod. So I brought him to a conference and he saw people walking around doing this vlogging thing. He said, why are they using these tools that aren't meant for vlogging? What if there was one that was meant just for the fancy camera where like professional vloggers could use it? I'm like, I don't know, where is this thing?
Right.
And so we actually spent a couple of years inventing it, putting it together, going overseas and getting the whole thing made. And here we go. We have the Switch Pod. So I have a company called Products You're Proud Of, where we make over 100 different products at any given time. And we'll do it for companies, but also for influencers and entrepreneurs, anyone really who wants to make something, and we'll package it, we'll ship it, we'll warehouse it, we'll fulfill it. And I created that because of a previous book that I wrote called The Power of Starting Something Stupid. And this book was to help people turn their stupid ideas into their smart reality. Stupid is the new smart. And so I'm just kind of like doing and teaching and writing and doing and teaching and writing. So I have this process and I run a number of different companies. Ultimately, to give myself and other people their time back, I create projects to give people more space in their life, as opposed to taking up space for these things that they're trying to make happen.
Yes. And I loved the way that you kind of introduced that in your book, Anti-Time Management, just kind of telling a little bit about your background story and where the concept kind of came from it. So will you actually talk about that? Where did the concept of anti-time management actually come from?
Yeah, let me back into it a little bit. So I did a ton of research and found that time management isn't what we thought it was, and that it actually has a pretty dark history. And anyone who has a full calendar and feels like they've got nothing done should understand that this is a problem. But I'll explain that, but I didn't really think about it in that way. I wasn't trying to discover or unhinge time management or calendars or being organized. I really was just experiencing life. My brother-in-law passed away at 21 in his sleep out of nowhere. And, we think, at least in America, we've been taught for many generations that one day after we work really hard, we'll retire. And that in retirement, we'll finally be able to do everything we want to do. So I'm thinking about my life's choices and what's going to happen, in my 20s, thinking, oh my gosh, so you're telling me that 20 years from now, no, 40 years from now, no, 45 years from now. Yeah, people will go, that's a long time, but they don't realize that's 3 generations.
Right.
Us, our kids, and their kids. That's 45 years, and you go, wow, that's a lot of time. And I thought, I don't want to wait that long, and in my future, I saw myself, becoming self-reliant, making my money, doing my thing, going to college, getting married, having kids. And then one day going back and serving the world and serving people in other countries and alleviating poverty. And these were my big aspirations. But I thought, well, if I have these ideas now, why can't I do them now? Why would I impact negatively, possibly 3 generations, not just out there? I'm not just trying to save everyone, but also my own family, and me. And so it wasn't that way for my brother-in-law. Like, that hit home. His name was Gavin. And I was like, he led a great life. He had lots of really cool things. He was the kind of person that would bring homeless people to church, and he'd go to other countries and build schools, and he loved everyone. But that was the end. That was the end of his life. And, we all have our faith. But if you think about it just in terms of right now in the present, there you go. And so a few years later, we had our 4th son, and we named him Gavin after my brother-in-law, Gavin. And this baby boy brought so much joy into our lives, and he kind of filled the hole that, his uncle left in his own little way. But he caught a cough, and this cough persisted. And the doctor said we were just, overprotective parents for bringing him into the doctors so often. And they're like, I don't know, this is our 4th son. I don't know. We have a little bit of experience here. And it turns out at one point they finally tested for something called pertussis, also known as whooping cough. And it was just too much on his little body. And I remember he was just on his little, baby bed thing there. And I'm on one side, my wife's on the other. And we knew this could destroy us and our marriage and just the way we live, just because it was such a tragic situation. And we told ourselves, like, how can we live better because of this child? How can we become closer? Because we know the storm is coming in addition to the storm that's happening right now. And I remember they took out all the little wires, all the tubes out of his body they were trying to keep him alive with. And I held him for a moment, handed him to my wife, who was sitting in a rocking chair. And I was on my knees. I had my hand on his heart, and she rocked him, and we just sang him lullabies until he slipped away. And I tear up telling the story, and I tell the story almost a little quickly, just to like almost not feel it as much as I feel it all the time. It's horrendous. But that's life, and that's death. And when we left that hospital empty-handed, the world never felt, ironically, heavier. And my wife one time said, you don't think about when you have to leave a room without the child that you brought into that room. When you go back into the world, leaving this child that you brought into the world. And she felt like, she told me there was another, her name's Natalie. She felt like there was another Natalie inside of her, someone that had maybe more courage than she had on her own, that was able to kind of hold her hand through that situation. And I think there really is something inside of us that's a little more courageous than we would ever know, that helps us, work through some of these things. And I know that someone listening to this may have experienced something similar or something different, but there's no comparing. Pain is pain. It fills the whole room. It fills your whole body, and it hurts. And, I realized that grief is a tunnel. It's not a cave. And that, whether you're spending your days binging Netflix and trying to get over it, there's no judgment. It's fine. I do that all the time. It feels great. Or if you dive your back into work and try to like avoid it and feel numb, like whatever it is, it's hard when you're feeling down and you punish yourself for feeling down. And it's hard when bad things happen and you feel okay, but you punish yourself for feeling okay, and as I looked at the world through this lens, I thought, what are we doing with our time? And how are we managing our time? And how come everything on the bullet list, the list of things to do, are not necessarily the same things that actually need to get done? Why are we prioritizing tasks over results, over family, over time, over freedom, over flexibility, over autonomy, over agility, over vacations? Why are we doing this to ourselves? And I'll fast forward, like we had 3 foster kids come and go, and not knowing where they are hurts in some ways worse than knowing that we have these loved ones that have passed on, because we don't know how they are.
Right.
And My wife had a stroke and lost her memory at some point. She got it back. My another son was hit by a car. He should be dead. And it sounds tragic, all these things, stacked together, and it is, and it was. At the same time, we have learned to live a life without regret. And life is short. That's not just some cliche. It's instead of saying one day we're going to live and do these things, we've been forced by circumstance to say these other things might not ever happen, and we might not be able to do these 10 steps. What's the 11th step, the thing we actually wanted to achieve anyways? Why can't we just do that right now? Build this castle and create a moat to protect it. Why do we have to work and then live? Why can't we live and create work that protects it? So anti-time management addresses those things, and it helps us and has helped many other people not only be super productive and organized in a better way and stop managing their time, they start prioritizing their attention. And the idea is to don't time your values, value your time.
Right.
And that changes everything.
Yes. And I think part of it too is not only you had talked about in your book about time management, where it comes, why it was originally created, as far as to like keep people in line as 9 to 5 and working as much as possibly humanly possible. But it also, that whole idea of you have to live until retirement and wait until retirement till 65, it breaks a mindset. As someone myself that grew up blue collar, like that is what you were taught. You saved all your pennies until you got to retirement, and that's when you got to live. I can still remember my dad saying certain things about like, oh, you want to go to Ireland? I want to go to Ireland too. I'm waiting until I retire. That was just the way that we grew up. So I feel like not only are you breaking the stereotype of time management, but also really bending the mindset that people have about retirement and what it should look like to live your life to the fullest now.
Yeah, no, you articulated it so perfectly. And also it's hard. We can't judge, like our parents and grandparents and great grandparents, because it is what it is. It was what it was. And it is a very new situation today. And we have way more opportunities in different ways to live remotely and do it from wherever. So things have changed, but where we can sort of like maybe have a little more impact is to say, why are we still using 19th and 20th century thinking in the 21st century? That's something we can talk about.
Yes. So much.
So when I started looking at the history of time management, I realized that a little over, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we got this industrial revolution. There's a second industrial revolution. This is the first time that farmers are moving to the city, and in the city, they're not doing any farming work. They're working on machines, and people wanted jobs, and they didn't necessarily know what they were doing or how. And so there's this new thing. This guy named Frederick Taylor created something called scientific management. And it was the first time that in mass, they separated the head from the body, meaning management became, we tell you what to do. Whereas before it was all one. The artisans, the craftsmen, the tradesmen, the machinists, they would have this specialized knowledge. They'd create these things. It wasn't necessarily streamlined or scalable, but that's the way it was. So under management, they started saying, we're going to take the knowledge from you on purpose, and then we're going to tell you exactly what to do so you don't have to think on purpose. So now we have generations of people who don't know what is happening or why. They just are being told exactly what to do. Eventually, they started calling themselves automatons, like the wooden men, those robotic machines, those that they used to use. They have them sometimes at Disneyland too, right? You see them, the old school ones, because what they realized was, lots of things are happening. Lots of good things have happened because of mass production. But at the same time, the toll it's taking on the lives of people changed humanity. It changed humanity. And when you look at time management, it's weird that this word became part of the self-help vernacular, because time management was specifically designed to control and measure every drop of blood, sweat, and tears from workers. It was meant to squeeze workers. It was not designed to give you more time. Ironically, the owners of these companies were off playing in Europe, doing whatever they wanted, so to speak, while others were using this system to let them know what to do. And then you fast forward to today and you go, that's just not the way it is anymore. Any corporation that does that, at least, in the United States, it still happens. These people have more opportunities and they leave and they go somewhere else. Or they stay because of other incentives. That's when you go, well, why is this corporation giving me quote unquote flexibility? It's a longer leash. It's a longer leash. So you start realizing corporations were not invented to give people personal development. They were invented to make money.
Yes.
So if you want personal development, if you want to be organized, if you want to have a life, you have to put your life first and then the work to support it. Because we've been taught for 200 years to put work first. And one day, magically, the corporation will grant you the special privilege to finally have a life. You don't have to do that anymore. You just don't have to do that anymore.
So talk to me about time tipping. Can you how exactly does it work?
So under anti-time management, I have this process called time tipping. There's a whole framework, and I call these people time tippers. Time tippers treat time the way Marie Kondo might treat clothes and closets and organizing. And you're looking at time with joy and love, right? And attention, and you're getting rid of the things that have served you. And you're creating more space for the things that might continue to serve you, or new things that you might want to have come into your life. So as one more analogy, I think of it like baking a cake. If you bake a cake without sugar, you can't expect it to be sweet. Unless you're a keto person and you sprinkle something else in there. No, I get it. But if you bake a cake without sugar, you can't expect it to be sweet. In the same way, if you have values and say, one day I'll live them, you can't expect to have a life lived on value. You can't expect to say, I have priorities and one day I'll live them, and say I have a life that was prioritized. You just can't do that. And if you think about it like a little more literally, if we really took our values and baked them in from the start, they would grow with you throughout your life. They would expand. And time is it's so elusive. If you think about it as health, I want to be healthy. Okay, I'm going to start in 10 years. I can't wait in 10 years when I can finally start being healthy. Health doesn't work that way. It's the same way with time. If you want more time later, you need to discover how to create more time now, because then you remove bottlenecks and you live your values from the start. You create different types of positive constraints that allow you to think differently. So instead of sacrificing stuff for something else, you include it and you work differently. I really learned writing this book that when you sacrifice what you love for success, you get neither. And you can ask any multimillionaire about their life. If they didn't live it on purpose, they didn't find their life in their riches. Same with fame. And you say the same thing about poverty. I'm just saying values can be expanded or contracted with money and the way you work. Money can help accelerate it or not, but it's how you work that really makes a difference in your lifestyle. Many millionaires are strapped to chairs. So, and they're not living the life they want to. Families will spend a lot of their time not doing family things, telling themselves they're sacrificing their family for their family. Love doesn't work that way. Every kid that grows up that has problems with their mom and dad will tell you, my mom and dad weren't there, but they were grinding for me. Did that work? Well, it got me here. I'm great. I get it. But you don't need to plant sunflower seeds if you want an oak tree. You plant acorns. Right? This is too real. It's too real.
Yes.
So for someone to say, how do you actually do this? I'll spell it out specifically, and then we can get a little more granular if you want to. But when you say, I want to get paid a certain way, you automatically decide how your lifestyle is going to be, because you're going to move somewhere, you're going to work a certain way, and it's decided. When you say, I have a purpose and I'm going to prioritize it, priorities mean they come prior, proceed, precede. But in kindergarten, they told us, not specifically, but they told us that priorities come last. Hey, you want this jelly bean, little 5 or 6 year old? You can have it at the end of class when you're really, really good. Had nothing to do with the jelly bean. It was about control.
Right.
Same thing with the marshmallow test. Hey, if you eat the marshmallow now, you won't get 2, but if you eat it later, I will give you more. Had nothing to do with patience and being successful in life. Had everything to do with the controller controlling the kid with an incentive. We don't think about it. So you create a purpose, with a priority, and a project that supports it, and then payments that are in alignment with it. So instead of saying, I want this result, so I'm going to get a job and one day get it, you say, I want this result, so I'm going to identify as a person that has that result and do it this way and create work that supports it.
Yes. And I think that was the piece for me. I was reading it after I had a client meeting coaching call with a bunch of mastermind people that are part of my group. And one of the girls was really struggling because she's just dealing with a lot right now with her twins and just always constantly sick. COVID, the kids are never in school. She doesn't have anything regular. And she said on the call, I know that I ultimately want to be able to do in-person parents, helping them with their parenting, but I don't know what to do right now. And at the time, it didn't hit me. And then I was sitting in the car at dance, reading your book, and I read a line and I read it over and I sent her a screenshot and I'm like, I want you to read that. And I want you to read it again. I said, that's telling you right there that why wait for 5 years from now when you think you can do in-person events? Let's plan something now where you can start to do it as already able to impact those people. Why wait until it's absolutely perfect and you can do it however else? Start it now to be able to do those things and figure out what people need from you.
Yes. Oh, I love that, because let's be real. 5 years from now, life only gets busier.
Mm-hmm.
I got a bunch of kids. You know what I mean? They only get busier. But it's ask a better question, get a better answer. It's not about either or thinking. It's how can I do this thing without this negative result that I'm worried about by next year, by next Tuesday? So how can I create in-person events without it affecting my spouse or my children or my time? Now, I don't necessarily know the answer yet. We have to dig deeper. But when you don't ask that question, you've shut off the possibility of ever coming up with an answer because your mind won't think about it. Your mind says, oh, you had an idea, you're not going to do it. Closed right. For business. Oh, you have an idea, you're going to leave it open. We're open for business. Let's see if we can solve this problem. So when you ask a better question, you get a better answer. When you ask a better question, you create a better life because your life is led by the questions you ask.
So good. Yes. So very true. So now a lot of my listeners are bloggers and some of them are working part-time because of a full-time job. Like I was a former teacher, or they're working part-time due to younger kids being home. How can they use anti-time management the best way possible?
So you would say, what's the job of my goal? Because you got to move beyond the goal. So like whatever job you have, which could be parent, and it could also be your profession, and it could be taking care of yourself, and it could be taking care of your own parents, depending on where you're at in life, like whatever it is, we all have these goals, but goals from experience are tasks. They're not goals anymore. You've done it before. You can do it again. Goals outside experience are growth. So inherently, someone who sets a quote unquote real goal should understand that they don't know how to do it, and that's on purpose. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a growth goal. Okay. And so when you identify the purpose of what you're doing, there becomes a million ways to do it. So if I want to see the sunset, I might say, oh, I should climb a mountain. But am I going to climb it? Am I going to walk it? Am I going to scale it? Am I going to take a helicopter? You can't get mad at your neighbor for going to the top of the mountain on a donkey when you decided to hike, because they decided to take a donkey and you decided to hike. Was it about the donkey ride, or was it about the hike, or was it about the sunset? Because if it was about the sunset, you didn't have to climb a mountain at all. You probably could have walked outside and done nothing and just seen it. So once you decide what's the goal of this, having the sunset, or having a positive experience with my family, you might not need to see the sunset at all. So it changes. So what people have to do is they have to realize, like Covey said, when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. So when someone says, I can't do these things, first let's recognize, You chose the consequence of the job already, and you did that on purpose. You spent a ton of time and a ton of money to get this very job, or spent a ton of time and a ton of money getting married. You spent a ton of time and a ton of money having these children. You chose that. So it's not, by saying this, you stop blaming things and you recognize what's inside your control and what's outside your control. Once you do that, then you can decide what's the goal of the goal. What's the real purpose I'm doing that, and come up with better ways. One of the simple tools that I use in this, and I'll give you a link so people can get this tool, just for free. It's inside the book too. I call it EDO, EDO, eliminate, delegate, and outsource. And if you were to take you take a piece of paper in long ways, fold it in half, and on the left-hand side, write down everything you do, personally, professionally, like the people in your life, like the play, the things that you like, everything you do from day, to night, everything. You will see on one half sheet of paper your entire life. Because inside of our heads, our life is our past and all the things we're trying to avoid. That's why we do the things we do, because we're avoiding past pains. And then we think towards the future, but no one else around us, not even our spouse, has any idea of what's going on in our heads. They only see how we show up. So when you see how you show up in the world and you go, oh, what are the things on this list that I actually want to do? Want, not that you're good at. Want. What do you like and want to do? And put them on the right-hand side. You'll see how imbalanced your life is. And this is why your energy is being taken away. You're spending 80% of your time on things you feel like you have to do, and only 20% on the things that you like to do. But if you were to eliminate, delegate, and outsource the things that have to get done, but you don't want to do, in theory, I know we're not solving the problem yet, your life would be balanced. I'm only doing the things I like and want to do. And you go, well, I already have a job and I have this and that. You can apply this to your job. You can apply this to how you spend your time there. You can decide if you stay in this job or get a new one. You can decide the next segue to the next thing you want to do. But balance is a terrible word for work and life, because balance in physics means motionless. A perfectly balanced ball does not move. You can't score unless it's moving in the direction you want it to go. So to move the ball forward, on the right-hand side of the paper, you then write down all the things you do like and want to do, double down on the ones you're already doing, and you now have created space for the things you like and want. So if someone were to say, my purpose is X, but they spend their life doing Y to get X, they will never get X. That's too real. So people will say, I have this dream, I have this goal, and they'll do everything but the dream and the goal, and they'll do it on purpose, telling themselves that one day they'll get it. No, if you want a goal, you have to do and become the goal. So you work from the dream, not endlessly toward it.
Right. And so many of my listeners are bloggers. They are influencers. They do have to do social media, but part of their want is never to have to do social media, where that they feel like becomes a time suck and they don't get to have the engagement that they thought or wanted. So I think that looking at that as, how can we put that off of our plate? What would that look like if I didn't engage on Instagram or TikTok or wherever it might be? Where is going to be the best place for me to be spending my time that is in my purpose, is solving the problem that I'm trying to create for my audience and give them that fix that they're looking for?
That's really good. Let me answer that specifically then for creators. So we are obsessed with goals, habits, and strengths. But we have forgotten that goals, habits, and strengths have a purpose. The purpose is not the goal or the habit or the strength. It's where those goals, habits, and strengths lead us. So goals, habits, and strengths have become ends unto themselves. So you have to delegate results, not means. When you focus on the means, we could say, sure, someone else could blog for me. Sure, someone else could post for me. Sure, someone else could. That's not going to make you any more money. Your business model gives you money. So I work with tons of bloggers, photographers, creators on YouTube, like an absurd amount of them. and their emotions go up and down with how well their last reel did, right?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just like laughing because it's too real. I mean, I'm the same way. But if you were to say, hold on, this one person, she's amazing. She was doing something similar and she was ready to give up. She has kids. She's trying to do it. I said, hold on. I got very specific. If this made more money, would you do it? And she said, well, of course I would. Oh, so this isn't actually about content creation, is it? This is about money. That changes the game, because once it's about money, then we go, well, then how could you engage the right people? There might be less of them. They might not have as many views. She made $30,000 in 7 days when she was broke the week before, only by asking that one question. So your business model is everything, but you have to ask, what's the business model for? For her, it was to have more time with her kids. So she came crying, Richie, I'm so excited all this happened. Guess what? I got to go out to the skate park with my kids. It's the first time I've done it in years. She made more money in less time and had time with her kids because she asked a better question, becoming a time tipper using the principles of anti-time management. So it's possible.
Yes, it is. And you can see it. And when it's tied to your purpose, like you've talked about, it just makes so much more sense because it does put everything in line. So Richie, where can my audience go and get your book? You also talked about you have a workbook that goes hand in hand with it. Where are the best places to go for that? We're going to make sure that it's linked.
Thank you. Yeah. Go to richienorton.com/time. And right there, I'll have this free challenge. It has tons of tools and worksheets from the book itself, video stuff, audio stuff. It's all there to help you kind of, take you by the hand and kind of figure it out step by step. And you can do that with your life partner, your business partner, whoever, and you can make this work. And of course, Anti-Time Management is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, anywhere that you can buy books. I know that here we're talking like kind of high level. As you know, the book gets very specific about people in all kinds of different industries wanting to do all kinds of different things, and shows you how to use these principles based on your situation, not on someone else's. So you guys should love this stuff.
Yes, no, absolutely. Richie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and share with my audience. I truly appreciate it.
Sam, it was my honor. That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Of course.
Good times. All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. You have to make sure that if you haven't already, gone over and grab his book. It is excellent. You can also, of course, get the workbook that he was talking about that goes along with it. He does absolutely go deeper into these series he's talking about with anti-time management and time tipping. For those of you that might have gotten a little misty-eyed when he was telling your story, his story was actually a little bit longer than anticipated because he could tell I was trying to keep myself together. Definitely started to glass over with a little bit of tears coming to my eyes, and he just continued to tell a story so that I could get myself together and continue the interview. But I just am so grateful for him coming on. I hope that you appreciated and got so much value out of this as I did. As always, you guys, this is why I'm able to get great guests like Richie, because you leave a podcast rating. So go to your favorite app and leave me a rating and review, and I will always appreciate you guys. All right, until next time, I will see you all then.